But if in all these ways the Queen and her epoch were profoundly separated, the points of contact between them also were not few. Victoria understood very well the meaning and the attractions of power and property, and in such learning the English nation too had grown to be more and more proficient. During the last 15 years of the reign, for the short Liberal administration of 1892 was a mere interlude, imperialism was the dominant creed of the country. It was Victoria's as well. In this direction, if in no other, she had allowed her mind to develop. Under Disraeli's tutelage, the British dominions over the seas had come to mean much more to her than ever before, and in particular she had grown enamoured of the East. The thought of India fascinated her. She set to and learnt a little Hindustani. She engaged some Indian servants, who became her inseparable attendants, and one of whom, Munshi Abdul Karim, eventually almost succeeded to the position which had once been John Brown's. At the same time, the imperialist temper of the nation invested her office with a new significance exactly harmonising with her own inmost proclivities. The English polity was in the main a common sense structure, but there was always a corner in it where common sense could not enter, where somehow or other the ordinary measurements were not applicable and the ordinary rules did not apply. So our ancestors had laid it down, giving scope in their wisdom to that mystical element which, as it seems, can never quite be eradicated from the affairs of men. Naturally, it was in the Crown that the mysticism of the English polity was concentrated. The Crown, with its venerable antiquity, its sacred associations, its imposing spectacular array. But for nearly 2 centuries common sense had been predominant in the great building, and the little unexplored, inexplicable corner had attracted small attention. Then, with the rise of imperialism, there was a change, for imperialism is a faith as well as a business. As it grew, the mysticism in English public life grew with it, and simultaneously a new importance began to attach to the Crown. The need for a symbol of England's might, of England's worth, of England's extraordinary and mysterious destiny, became felt more urgently than ever before. The Crown was that symbol, and the Crown rested upon the head of Victoria. Thus it happened that while by the end of the reign the power of the sovereign had appreciably diminished, the prestige of the sovereign had enormously grown. Yet this prestige was not merely the outcome of public changes; it was an intensely personal matter too. Victoria was the Queen of England, the Empress of India, the quintessential pivot round which the whole magnificent machine was revolving. But how much more besides! For one thing, she was of a great age, an almost indispensable qualification for popularity in England. She had given proof of one of the most admired characteristics of the race, persistent vitality. She had reigned for 60 years, and she was not out. And then she was a character. The outlines of her nature were firmly drawn, and even through the mists which envelop royalty, clearly visible. In the popular imagination her familiar figure filled, with satisfying ease, a distinct and memorable place. It was, besides, the kind of figure which naturally called forth the admiring sympathy of the great majority of the nation. Goodness they prized above every other human quality, and Victoria, who had said that she would be good at the age of 12, had kept her word. Duty, conscience, morality, yes, in the light of those high beacons the Queen had always lived. She had passed her days in work and not in pleasure, in public responsibilities and family cares. The standard of solid virtue which had been set up so long ago amid the domestic happiness of Osborne had never been lowered for an instant. For more than half a century no divorced lady had approached the precincts of the court. Victoria, indeed, in her enthusiasm for wifely fidelity, had laid down a still stricter ordinance. she frowned severely upon any widow who married again. Considering that she herself was the offspring of a widow's second marriage, this prohibition might be regarded as an eccentricity, but no doubt it was an eccentricity on the right side. The middle classes, firm in the triple brass of their respectability, rejoiced with a special joy over the most respectable of queens. They almost claimed her, indeed, as one of themselves. But this would have been an exaggeration; for, though many of her characteristics were most often found among the middle classes, in other respects, in her manners for instance, Victoria was decidedly aristocratic. And in one important particular she was neither aristocratic nor middle class. Her attitude towards herself was simply regal. Such qualities were obvious and important. But in the impact of a personality it is something deeper, something fundamental and common to all its qualities, that really tells. In Victoria it is easy to discern the nature of this underlying element. It was a peculiar sincerity. Her truthfulness, her single-mindedness, the vividness of her emotions and her unrestrained expression of them, were the varied forms which this central characteristic assumed. It was her sincerity which gave her at once her impressiveness, her charm, and her absurdity. She moved through life with the imposing certitude of one to whom concealment was impossible, either towards her surroundings or towards herself. There she was, all of her, the Queen of England, complete and obvious. The world might take her or leave her; she had nothing more to show or to explain or to modify; and with her peerless carriage she swept along her path. And not only was concealment out of the question; reticence, reserve, even dignity itself, as it sometimes seemed, might be very well dispensed with. As Lady Lyttelton said, "There is a transparency in her truth that is very striking; not a shade of exaggeration in describing feelings or facts, like very few other people I ever knew. Many may be as true, but I think it goes often along with some reserve. She talks all out, just as it is, no more and no less." She talked all out, and she wrote all out too. Her letters, in the surprising jet of their expression, remind one of a turned-on tap. What is within pours forth in an immediate, spontaneous rush. Her utterly unliterary style has at least the merit of being a vehicle exactly suited to her thoughts and feelings; and even the platitude of her phraseology carries with it a curiously personal flavour. Undoubtedly it was through her writings that she touched the heart of the public. Not only in her Highland journals, where the mild chronicle of her private proceedings was laid bare without a trace either of affectation or of embarrassment, but also in those remarkable messages to the nation which, from time to time, she published in the newspapers. Her people found her very close to them indeed. They felt instinctively Victoria's irresistible sincerity, and they responded; and in truth it was an endearing trait. The personality and the position too, the wonderful combination of them, that perhaps was what was finally fascinating in the case. The little old lady, with her white hair and her plain mourning clothes, in her wheeled chair or her donkey carriage, one saw her so; and then, close behind, with their immediate suggestion of singularity, of mystery, and of power, the Indian servants. That was the familiar vision, and it was admirable. But at chosen moments it was right that the widow of Windsor should step forth apparent queen. The last and the most glorious of such occasions was the Jubilee of 1897. Then, as the splendid procession passed along, escorting Victoria through the thronged, re-echoing streets of London, on her progress of thanksgiving to St. Paul's Cathedral, the greatness of her realm and the adoration of her subjects blazed out together. The tears welled to her eyes, and while the multitude roared round her,